Right, hello everybody. Hi, I'm here, Shirley. It's 11 o'clock on the dot, so I think we're going to start. Right, good morning everybody on a really special day today. Women in Sectional Title is turning 1 year old today, and we really would like to thank you so much for your ongoing support. We made it through 12 months of an unprecedented year, and I'm really, really grateful. I think the one thing that I've learned during this COVID pandemic is that we need the human connection, we need the support from each other. It's been a very big year for our platform, and we are really concretizing our commitment towards greater diversity and equal representation amongst our women across this sectional title and community schemes industry. I would really like to say that I'd like more women owners to join this forum. If everybody could really encourage people who've got an investment in their own units to join Women in Sectional Title, so that we can provide them with the education, the tools and the advocacy to ensure success. That's what it really, really is all about. Thank you especially to all of you for being part of our growth and success. Just bear with me because I do have some people to thank. It's our birthday, so I'm allowed to do that, and we can run over time a little bit. Michael Schaefer, first of all. Michael Schaefer from Zfin. Honestly, I asked him to join as our pioneering sponsor, and he just came on board without any questions being asked. That's greatly appreciated. Well, we won't forget that in a hurry, Michael. And ultimately, we also on our radar with Zfin, which obviously provides smart finance solutions to sectional schemes, is something called ZenTech. So ZenTech is now in a management and admin support function, which Zfin is going into, and we hope to showcase one of the women who this has benefited, a sort of success story, at our next webinar. Also, we'd like to thank Douglas Haig and Kayla Vessels from CIA Insurance Specialists for Buildings. Also, a great supporter, and you know the byline that CIA have, integrity, commitment, ability. I think that really resonates with people in the industry, and they've developed a great reputation in the market. Gary Engelbrecht from BCM Track. Gary, you'll always get an email from Gary and you look at the time and it's 3 o'clock in the morning or on a Sunday. He works so hard on providing the software for management schemes, and being innovative and being an ex-managing agent, he knows what the industry needs. So thanks very much to Gary as well. Puna LaRue, we all have a soft spot for Puna. He's so mild-mannered and gentle and really kind in the industry, and putting together Meeting Pal, which is an app for meetings. And we all know that meetings have been on the radar for sure in terms of the online space and the COVID pandemic opportunities, I suppose you could call them, that have been brought. He conveys his knowledge as well on webinars. So thank you, Puna. Sectional Title Solutions, Bradley Mason and Liesel Weber, big thank you for your kindness and support. Value-added solutions, you've got an advisory service, you've got energy, everything from greening to lighting, and also what I'm interested in watching is something called Trax. And Trax had a soft launch a while ago, and all the key players are looking at it. It's a free training service in 5 different languages in South Africa, and I think that's really going to take off, so we're watching that with great interest. Thank you also for jumping on board and holding our hands. Thank you also to our male supporters who've been fantastic and supported the ladies in their offices and even joined us on webinars, and we invite you, we welcome you, and we thank you for supporting us. Last but not least, the people closest around me. We've got our fellow committee members, Serena de Freitas, Annette Lang. Thanks for your support. You've been amazing, particularly over a rather difficult time in the last couple of months. Lisa Sadie, my partner in crime in Women in Sectional Title, providing the background information and content Yeah, I think that we definitely going places with whist. And thank you for your calmness and for just getting everything together. And last but not least, I'd like to thank Lola, my secretary, who's been amazing. I couldn't do anything without Lola. I wouldn't be here at all without Lola. And speaking of Lola, she's right here and she's brought a cake for women in sectional titles. So if you can all see it. Lovely cake. Thank you to Georgia Rucard for making us this beautiful cake. I'm sorry you guys aren't going to eat it, but we certainly are after this. Okay, so let's get down to why we're here today. We're talking about electricity regulation in the sectional title space, and certainly how sectional title complexes can generate their own electricity. Let me just put it in context before I introduce our guest. So this really interested me because on the 10th of June 2021, our President Cyril Ramaphosa released a press statement in one of his speeches, and he basically said that an urgent intervention is necessary for government in order for the preservation of economic recovery and reconstruction plans. And this urgent message had words like, we need to make bold moves, we need to tackle this crisis head on. And he said, an immediate and significant energy shortfall threatens our economic recovery. All right, so we've all known that there are problems looming and that there are issues around electricity, etc. And on the 12th of August, Government Gazette headlined an amendment to Schedule 2 of the Electricity Regulation Act 4 of 2006, and it exempts generation projects up to 100 megawatts from obtaining NERSA licensing. What is NERSA? National Energy Regulator of South Africa. So all of a sudden you've got a number being put on this to say that if you don't generate more than 100 megawatts, you can become part of this embedded generation project, which is literally making little power plants, I suppose, separately all over the country. So to talk more about this and to enlighten us, because this is something I'm a bit weak on, I never really understand how electricity works, but we've got Glen Van der Vyfer, who's the sales manager at Maxlite. And Maxlite is a solar company which has been in the solar space for 37 years. It's a family-run business. It's the founder of CESA. And I would say it's the longest-standing solar geyser and home system sort of solar entity in the country and the manufacturer of these things in the country. So a warm welcome to you, Glen. Lovely to have you here on our first birthday.
Thank you, Marina. Thank you and your team very much for giving us the opportunity and providing this platform. And happy birthday.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Glen. Really appreciate it.
Happy birthday.
So essentially, we're watching the unbundling of Eskom, as I see it, towards a more competitive kind of electricity market. I'd like you to just take us through what it means. You know, just pretend, for me personally, I need to understand it from the word go. I mean, you know, is it new? Have we always been allowed to create little solar generated plants? Just give us your take on this.
Okay, so just to clear up a point that you made now. Eskom is not at this stage using this law or this ruling to create power plants all around the country. What they are saying to people now is up until this limit. So if you've got a power plant of X, you are able to, or if you have generation capacity in your complex of, you know, 100 megawatts of power, and you only use sort of 80 kilowatts. The shortfall from what you consume to what you are able to generate, based on a few parameters and based on meeting a few regulations, that can be put back into the grid. So they are not saying, from the infrastructure, first of all, doesn't really exist, and the framework and the goalposts around how this is going to work isn't really completely in space yet. They don't really know how this is going to come about and what it will mean. But what they're saying is you are able to create your own power, utilize your own power, And whatever you don't utilize, you're able to put back into the grid, up to a cap of 100 megawatts. So,
and as I understand it, can I just interrupt here? Because I think probably, if I've read up on it as well, I think that this putting it back into the grid, it all sounds lovely and wonderful, and you think, oh well, what are we going to get? Like a credit for the amount of electricity that we putting out there? But it's almost like it's more for primary use, you know, so for that complex to use. The putting back into the grid seems to be a little bit of a vague thing, and I wouldn't stake my life on making much, you know, getting many credits and things. Would I be right to say that?
100%, Marina, 100% right. It's not something that I would use as a banker. You're absolutely right. They don't even have the framework for this at the moment as to how they're going to deal with it coming back into the grid. Remember, Eskom owns the lines. Eskom owns all the power lines, essentially, all the grid as it's known. So they don't really know how this whole thing is going to be dealt with. So really the focus should be utilizing methods of self-generation, creating systems for self-generation. And if there is an overflow, well, that's just something that you can put back. But I wouldn't stake my life on it, and I wouldn't build a business around or a model around putting power back onto the grid at this stage.
All right, so how do we produce power? I mean, how do we generate power? Do we bring wind, those windmill type of things in? What else do we use?
So the clever guys will tell you that there's a whole bunch of different technologies. There's wind, there's solar, there's focal solar, there's solar thermal. There's a whole bunch of technologies, but the yield that we get out of solar is by far the biggest. It's by far the most stable, and it's by far the least maintenance. You can, you know, follow the wind in certain places, but really our wind, as the clever guys from Eskom will say, is not. It's quite unstable, and it's not really the right type of wind. If we were living in a valley in Holland and the wind was sort of stable, flowing all the time, and it wasn't so gusty as we have it, there's less wear and tear on the turbines, there's less maintenance on those things. So at this stage, the simple solution is solar panels on a roof and generating some sort of power to either utilize the power at the point or to generate perhaps heat in the form of geysers. Okay,
and if we, to give all the listeners a kind of idea of how much power, you know, is utilized, we're given a cap by this regulation of 100 megawatts. If you're going to generate more than 100 megawatts, then you're going to have to go through NERSA and get licensing and all of that. So how much is 100 megawatts? I mean, just put it in perspective for us.
Yeah, it's quite a lot of power. 100 megawatts is quite a lot of power. I would guess so. Your average geyser is only 3 kilowatts of power, and 1 megawatt is 1,000 kilowatts of power. So 1,000 kilowatts of power, and the geyser is 3 kilowatts. So that gives you a bit of an understanding as to the quantum of power we're playing with. It is an ideal sort of sizing when you're getting into the industrial sort of space, when you've got factories, those types of things, and the mines, you know, the guys that really need the stability in terms of power. I don't know that the residential space is it's a very nice to have. It's maybe not business critical like you might find in a mining environment or in a manufacturing environment, where that stability of power in order to keep machines and jobs going is as essential.
Okay, let's talk about political will, because as far as I can see, electricity contributes to a huge income stream for government. So almost by distributing this out, you know, they're sort of saying one thing and saying, look, it's urgent, it's a crisis, we need to do that, but at the same time, they're going to lose out on a lot of money coming in. So, you know, how does this work? Because also, where are municipalities placed in all of this? Because we see that you can also make application not only through Eskom, but through the municipalities too.
Yes. So essentially, if we talk about Joburg, Cape Town, Durban, any of the major cities, you essentially buy power from the municipality. They have a resale agreement with Eskom, and typically you would buy power from the municipality. You get a City of Joburg account or an Ekurhuleni account, and that is a stream of income for the municipality. In fact, historically, it's probably been their biggest stream of income. So yeah, in terms of the political will or the will to want to really move off the reliance on Eskom and the reliance of municipalities to supply power, it's a very good question as to whether or not they really want that to happen. We will have to see when this framework is actually put together what sort of tariffs will be introduced. We've spoken about the feed-in tariff or feeding into the grid and turning back the meter and credits, but a lot of it is going to be seen as to supply and demand and the price that they're going to pay to buy this power back or credit the accounts of the complexes, and how they're going to deal with that whole thing. Are they going to sort of pay tuppence for it and charge excessively for their power? One's got to have a look, and NERSA is really going to be the people that play a massive part in regulating that and doing sorts of things. In touching on, for example, City of Cape Town, and I believe in Joburg as well, there are independent relationships that can be set up between, for example, a complex and perhaps the City of Cape Town, where the complex could generate power and sell it on a different level to the municipality as an IPP. But that structure is also yet to really be seen and how functional and effective it is. From what we understand, there are none working at the moment in the country like that.
Okay. Well, one would think, our municipalities at the moment, we're in huge fights where I live in Ekurhuleni, with Ekurhuleni, because there's no service delivery. You can't get anything out of them. So to actually put in these applications, how long would it take for them to okay something like that? Would you know?
From what we understand as an ESCO, it hasn't been done yet, and
not at all. Oh gosh, okay.
Not at all. That's the story we hear. If you read that article that Ramaphosa put together, the theory was that it was going to take 3 to 4 months before they get the nuts and bolts right, and how it's all going to work. So it hasn't really been tested yet. It hasn't really been implemented anywhere yet, and one's got to see what it looks like in time. At this stage, people that are interested in it and complexes of trustees that are looking at it, I would be far more encouraging to say, look at it from the perspective of supplying of giving yourself the reliability of supply rather than building a model around selling power back into the grid. Size your solutions and size your systems to suit yourself. That's really what they want. They want to offload the grid. They don't want to be buying power from everybody else.
Yeah.
They've had programs like the Eskom rebate program on solar geysers, which was actually very effective. Unfortunately, somewhere along the way, the political will took over, and we started seeing these pop-up sort of cheap geysers, cheap Chinese sort of low-pressure systems all over roofs and Alex and locations and informal settlements and RDP houses, where they were actually using that money to sort of buy the vote rather than perhaps using it to offload the grid and flooding suburbia and the more power hungry areas with solar geysers, which can save you 40 to 50% of your bill. So yeah, is there political? Good question. It's a good question.
So Glen, also, we're always interested to hear what they're doing overseas with community schemes and sectional title. And often in my experience, you kind of find that we think that, everyone's doing better things than we are. Would that be the case here? And what's happening overseas on this point?
It's a very interesting point, that the overseas market, because if you look at Germany, for example, Germany is sort of the leader in the solar space. They've had this feed-in tariff for a number of years. You were able to get a subsidy from buying German product. So you could put your house with German product and you would get a subsidy. You were able to feed power back into the grid and you would be able to receive an income from putting power back into the grid. And it started off at 50 cents or whatever it was a kilowatt. And it's now dwindled down to almost nothing. It's about supply and demand. As their grid became more stable, the price that they needed to pay for the power became less and less, and it actually wasn't attractive anymore. And Germany being a country that doesn't enjoy the sunshine like we enjoy the sunshine in South Africa, initially they were clawing at any form of power to stabilize their grid. And once their grid was a bit more stable, they've sort of whittled down the feed-in tariff to really insignificant amount that doesn't really justify doing it.
South Africa's got a different context, and in South Africa we're also faced with the trade unions, things like that. I mean, what are they going to say, particularly when it comes to coal? Because we're going to foresee issues if we're not having to produce coal. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's already starting. We've already seen uprisings and unhappiness with the coal trucks blocking freeways, causing a bit of upset around the fact that they don't want Eskom to reduce their reliance on coal-fired power stations. So yes, you're right. It's going to become more of a, you might make a lot of jobs or create a lot of jobs in the solar space. But potentially there's others that might be lost. I think this is not going to happen overnight. So for us to be saying, you're going to lose coal, you're going to lose, jobs in the coal sector, this is not the case at the moment. Potentially in years and years to come, it could be the possibility, but it's not a challenge for us for the next foreseeable future.
I suppose when we're talking about job creation, job creation, they spoke about creating 16,000 jobs over the next few years. Who would be jobs for who? I suppose the people involved with solar?
Yeah, essentially the solar industry in South Africa is is in its infancy. So there's large amount of growth that can happen in terms of installers and solar companies and solar organizations and suppliers, etc. So there's certainly a large amount of growth that can take place in this industry. It's a sort of sleeping giant, and we've seen it before in the Eskom rebate program, where suddenly there was this demand for solar water heaters to offload the grid, and the jobs soared. There was suddenly an influx of jobs in this space, and as they cut the Eskom rebate program, the jobs were lost just as quickly. CESA had a membership of 6 or 7 guys sitting around the table, bringing their own tea and coffee because they didn't have a budget for other things, to grow to almost over 750 members. And that meant 750 installers plus teams plus. And suddenly it's overnight it was gone as soon as they withdrew the subsidy. So this is linked into the feed-in tariff and what the cost is going to be on that feed-in tariff and what it's going to look like when it's put into place.
All right, so say, for example, we're 5 years down the line and the infrastructures come in and there are more regulations and we really all understand what to do. It's a fantastic concept for a body corporate or community scheme to be able to say, look, we generate our own power. We are the supplier of our own power. But how would it work? If we want to put solar panels up, would there be space issues? What if you've got like a high-rise building with a very small roof? What do you foresee the challenges to be?
Definitely the structure of the building is definitely a challenge. Not every building is going to be absolutely perfect. So those are going to to be complicated. Reticulating power within a complex and not separating sort of critical elements that need to be powered versus non-critical elements that don't need to be powered just means you need to oversize your systems. So understanding what solar can do is probably going to be the best steps that the homeowners can, or the trustees can start taking. Understanding how solar works, understanding that saving electricity is as effective as generating your own power. So when I say that, for example, solar geysers save you 40 to 50% of your bill. That might be as effective as generating your own power from solar PV panels and putting power back into your grid or into the complex's grid. So we look at each complex on a case-by-case scenario, understand what the trustees want. Do they want security of supply of power? Do they want to save money from an electrical perspective? What is it that they really want to do? And it's probably going to be a hybrid of both saving power and security of supply. That's what most people are bought into a security complex, to have that security so that they feel safe.
We've got a good question from Zandy Loda, asking about whether you can place these solar panels on carports.
Yes, yeah, probably one of the more effective places to put solar panels are on the carport if the roof structures don't accommodate for a north orientation. And again, sometimes the carports won't allow for a north orientation. You can actually get specific carports made that allow for an orientation to suit, and you basically structure your carports to orientate north and put panels on. A lot of people, a lot of businesses and organizations are doing that.
And Glenn, what can't you put solar panels on? What kind of roofing would be problematic?
If you know, things like asbestos roofs, they would be quite challenging, simply because we really got, you know, the drivers. Nobody actually wants asbestos roofing. Slate roofing can be a bit tricky. It's not always the most tricky, but it can be tricky because typically it has a very steep pitch. Thatch is obviously out of the question. You would need that grass to be drying, so thatch is out of the question. So most roofs can have panels on it in some fashion, and typically if a roof can't have it, you spoke of a high-rise building. In China, for example, they stick the north orientation full of either solar water heaters or solar panels and generate electricity using the front facade of the building rather than just using the roof space. So where there's a will, there's a way. I think the biggest issue that we have in the sectional title space is the aesthetics. So what looks good for one, or what's practical for one, doesn't look good for the other, and it's about getting that functional, aesthetic understanding together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other challenge that you've got is owner consent, and who agrees and who doesn't agree, and what resolutions do you need. So Glenn, I'm going to come back to you at the end. Well, not towards the end. I just wanted to sort of put a pin in the legal position. From my perspective, in order to proceed with a project of this nature, because it would sort of constitute a reasonably necessary improvement to common property, I would think that you would need a special resolution from owners in order to be able to sign a contract with any kind of company to install. I know for a fact as well, and that would be Management Rule 29.2, you would also need to give 30 days notice of this, the intention to do this project. Yeah, special resolution. Thank you. I'm getting some confirmation of that. You'd have to tell them the costs, how you're going to raise the capital, what it's for, how you're going to pay it over a certain number of years, and you've got to give people 30 days notice of this. And it's a big spend. I mean, it's big also if you've got a directive at your AGM, which says that you're not allowed to spend more money unless you go back. You've got to also take that into account. But I would assume that that's really the legal position. I am aware, and particularly at the coast, that they've tried to make the roof exclusive use area. So creating, even through the rules, an exclusive use area. Serena, I know that you had some views about that as well. We chatted the other day about it. I wonder if you could also just chime in here with your views.
Yes, so in terms of a block of flats where there's only limited space on the roof, we have an individual who wants to put up their own panel, which is all fine and well for the trustees or a special resolution, but then we look at what resolution and what are the terms and conditions. So if we were going to create exclusive use areas, we would have to do so in terms of the conduct rules. So say in 5 years' time, by this time, you've now got all the units that have now, even if they can all fit on the roof, and there's a roof leak. How do we now determine who is responsible in terms of whose exclusive use area has now failed and needs to be remedied? Who's going to be responsible for the payment? So in my view, yes, I think it would be best for the scheme to do it. As Glen and Marina and I discussed on Monday, that would be the best thing, to have the special resolution. Also, if you need to borrow money to do it, you would need a special resolution for that as well, to pay it off, so that the scheme can then at least put all the panels on a roof if we're talking about a block of flats or a high-rise building. So that, you know, everyone gets equal share or equal benefit. I don't think we've got a problem when it comes to simplexes and duplexes and standalone houses, like in a homeowners association or an estate. There, I think if you incorporate something into the conduct rules as to what is required, you can make sure that at least you've got uniformity in terms of that aesthetic appearance that you were mentioning. But I think practically to create exclusive use areas, I know a lot of people saying that's the only way to do it. That's the best way to do it. Make them all responsible for their own section of roof. In a block of flats, I don't see how that's going to work when everyone has now got their panel up.
I agree, Serena. I don't think it's sustainable to do it by exclusive use area, creating little areas on a roof. At the end of the day, it's a joint decision and it's a joint thing, and I think that it needs to be effected like that. And Helen Marshall also asked, should we get the body corporate to do it? Should we get experts to do it? For me, it's surrounding yourself with experts in every avenue or angle of life. If you get the right people to come in and do the right job properly in one go, you're going to, and remember that I see the bad side of sectional title. I see all the dramas and all the disputes. It's almost, I can say there's nothing I haven't seen, but then today I will see something new, I can assure you. So at the end of the day, for me, a special resolution to obtain from the owners would be the best route to go. Follow Management Rule 29.2 and get a proper company to put things together and do the right things. Glen, I'm going to go back to you. As the position sits now, what should trustees be focusing on more? What should they be doing now?
I would say the first thing that they should start doing is savings. Focusing on the savings from SOAP. Savings being how to maximize the efficiency of the complex in terms of perhaps your heaters, or perhaps the common lighting, or maybe offloading the guardhouse in an independent standalone system that focuses solely on the guardhouse, on the electrical fences, on the cameras. Slowly reduce your reliance and your demand on the grid, so that in the future, when this possibly all comes to light, you are in a position where you don't maybe need a full 100 megawatts of power on your roof, because you've slowly whittled down and you're now saving a lot more electricity by having removed your geysers, by having eliminated your guardhouse, by taking the common property lights and changing them from incandescent lamps to LED lamps. And you've saved a considerable amount of electricity. Again, there are two sides to electricity. The first one is generation of power to suit what you have running today. The second side is reducing your reliance on the grid to savings and trying to have a lower baseline on how much electricity you consume. You can save 40 to 50% of your bill for a complex just by changing your geysers. It's as good as putting on solar panels to supply power to 50% of your complex.
I just wanted to also ask, people are asking questions about cost. So I mean, if I suppose it depends on every single complex is different, but how long generally is it going to take to pay back the infrastructural installation?
It's if you're talking PV panels and you're talking in a standard home, anything from 5-10 years to recoup that money. It also depends on how smart you're going to be in terms of your installation, where you're going to install the system, how you're going to install the system. So it's a bit of a return on investment. It's not just overnight. Solar geysers, on the other hand, far quicker. 3 to 4 years, your money's back in your bank. So the return on investment from a geyser perspective is far better than what it is in the PV.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic because I think it's top of mind. Everybody wants to know what they can do now to, we want to go green. And then when you start doing the investigation, you see that it's quite an expensive process. Dirk, you say our initial system will be repaid within 5 years. I think it's great to be able to also just share all our best practices, and even on this forum, if anybody's got any other suggestions or concerns, please just keep in touch with us. And you've said, yes, it becomes a great income stream for the body corporates. And we know that body corporates are always looking for extra money. Times are definitely tight. I'd like to open up the floor if anybody'd like to ask a question. You don't have to type. You've got time now to ask. I'm going to open it up. Anyone wants to ask a question? No. Okay, dokes. Glenn, would you like to, is there anything else that you'd like to add to let us know?
I think one has just also got to be very careful. There are a number of means of trying to Dirk was suggesting that there's an income stream for the body corporate. They've obviously got a structure that allows for that. But one's just got to be careful not to shift who you're buying your power from perhaps a municipality to perhaps a company that is now selling your power because they've introduced some form of solar something into your roof. So one's just got to be careful that you don't change who you're buying your power from. If you want to sort of go the solar route and you're looking to finance it, you're financing an asset. If you're going to change who you're buying your power from, you now suddenly aren't entirely regulated and protected by the nurses and the ESCOMs and the municipalities. So one's just got to be very careful of who you're going to buy your power from, where that money is going to go, and what sort of control you have over that. I've seen things like geysers being used to chase power, to chase power demand on a complex, because complex is being bought via a third party. I've seen it now in three places where they're utilizing where the people buy the power from in different ways to generate the income stream. And that one just got to be careful of where you're buying your power from and what you're giving up by changing it.
Something else popped up now, quite interesting, about cleaning the solar panels. And they need they need cleaning. And obviously, it's, maintenance is part of it, is keeping things nice and clean and free from dust. And would it be the body corporate responsibility? Well, yes, I would definitely say that it would be. I don't know if anyone disagrees with me, but it's on the roof, it's on common property. And certainly I think it would be a body corporate responsibility. Is there anything else that you need to do with solar panels from a cleaning point of view and that kind of thing?
You can. The cleaning of the panels is just to keep it as absolutely as efficiency as possible. So does one need to clean it? If you want to keep the system as efficient as possible, yes. It does help to have a clean panel. Is it something that you have to do? It's not. Is it something that you would want to do to maximize your return on investment? Probably. If you've got less demand on your entire complex, it's maybe not as critical. It's all about the right fit for the right complex. Looking at what is there, what you need, understanding what the demands are on a complex, and making a solution to fit. I personally don't like to have one set of panels that supplies power to the whole complex, because I just find it to be, you can't separate certain things that should just not be driven by solar. I prefer to have sort of smaller systems, less reliant on each other. Like I say, common property might be one, the guardhouse might be one, the geysers might be another, the hall or the common sort of get together area, that might be a third. So it's just about looking at the complex. What are the requirements? What are the wants and needs for the complex, and go from there.
If anybody wants to contact you, can you just give us your email address, please?
Sure, it's Glen at Maxlite, maxlite.co.za, and that's Glen with all single N.
Excellent. Well, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you very much, Glen. We really appreciate your input today. I think this was a hot topic of conversation, and it's nice to know, particularly as managing agents, if anybody is asking you what's happening in the industry, that we know what to reply. So thank you very much again, Glen.
Thank you, Marina. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you to your team. Happy Christmas.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I think it's about time now for our team here at our Bedford View office at Women in Sectional Title at BBM to go and have a bite of that cake. Thank you so much to all of you for your kind wishes. We've received so many wonderful wishes and gifts for Women in Sectional Title birthday. I appreciate it. And we're just going to go from strength to strength, certainly in the next 12 months. In the meantime, until we see you again in November, take care, keep safe, yeah, let's keep up the education, growth and sharing platform. Bye-bye for now.